When I turned 27, my family started pressuring me to get married. I abruptly broke up with the girlfriend I'd worshipped for 3 years and started going back to my hometown for blind dates. My buddy Mike asked me, "You're so into Chloe, can you really let her go?" I scoffed. "I'm not an idiot. She's the type you have fun with. But if I actually married her, wouldn't my life be a living hell?" But then a grim, familiar voice came from right beside me. "Oh, so that's the reason you dumped me, is it?" Dragging my suitcase home, I ran right into a guy opening her apartment door to leave. A loose black t-shirt hung off his sharp collarbones, and he wore athletic shorts so short you could barely see them, paired with a pair of limited edition designer sneakers. I recognized him as the guitarist from Chloe's band, Leo the First Think, a handsome kid in his early 20s. I instinctively ducked back behind the stairwell door, staying out of sight. A moment later, Chloe emerged from the apartment behind him wearing a pair of hot pants, leaning lazily against the doorframe as she lit a cigarette. She was only wearing a sports bra on top, and water was still trickling down the impressive abs on her flat stomach. After a beat, she casually tossed an LV crossbody bag at him. "Here." Leo's eyes lit up, and he spun around to hug Chloe, exclaiming excitedly, "Whoa, I've wanted this bag forever. Where did you get it?" "Picked it up on my last trip to Paris. I seriously love it. Thank you, babe." Leo tried to linger, but Chloe was already getting impatient, her brow furrowing slightly. "Okay, that's enough. Get going." The boy peeled himself off her, half pouting, half whining. "So cruel. 1 minute you're calling me babe. The next you're kicking me to the curb." He didn't seem upset, though, happily slinging the bag over his shoulder and blowing Chloe a kiss. "All right, I'm out. See you tomorrow." After he was gone, I stepped out from behind the stairwell door. Chloe didn't seem to expect me back so suddenly either. She froze for a second, but her expression quickly smoothed back to casual. "Why didn't you call ahead before coming back?" I just looked at her for a moment. It was late. I was afraid I'd wake you. The hickey on Chloe's neck was still fresh, but she didn't show a hint of guilt, just grabbed my arm and pulled me inside. "I'm starving. Make something to eat," she said, flopping onto the couch and turning on the TV as if nothing had just happened. When I didn't move, she frowned. "What's wrong?" Then, as if realizing, a lazy smile played on her lips. "Miss me?" She got up and wrapped her arms around me from behind, her warm breath ghosting over my neck as her hands slowly slid up under my shirt. "Guess I'll have you for an appetizer then." Her fingertips, calloused from years of playing guitar, created a tingling friction against my skin. I closed my eyes and wearily pulled her hands away. I really was attracted to Chloe's body. Her looks were the main reason I chased her in the first place. But whether it was the long flight or the guy from earlier, right now I just felt exhausted, completely turned off. Chloe wasn't used to me rejecting her. She froze, her expression darkening. "What is it?" I glanced down and saw a crumpled black heap on the rug. It was a t-shirt, torn to pieces. Chloe obviously saw it too. She clicked her tongue, her face souring. A tense silence filled the living room. She pulled a cigarette from her pack and lit it, the crisp snap of the menthol capsule breaking the quiet. His lease was up and he had nowhere to go, so I let him crash here for a night. Nothing happened. I looked at Chloe, but the plume of white smoke between us obscured her expression, just as it obscured mine from her. But we both knew how pathetic that excuse was. This wasn't the first time Chloe had cheated. She was a natural-born flirt, a wild child. She was like that when I first met her. Back then, Mike dragged me to see this popular indie rock band, saying the lead singer was a total knockout and the tickets were impossible to get. I wasn't into the rock scene, so I was pretty bored with the idea. Until Chloe walked on stage. Her head was bowed as she tuned her guitar, dark, unstyled hair falling across her pale forehead, occasionally revealing a glimpse of her eyelids. She was the most plainly dressed person there, just a simple black t-shirt and jeans, yet she instantly became the center of everyone's attention. That face was the ultimate luxury good. She looked up, and the hazy stage lights reflected in her amber eyes, a ghost of a smile on her lips. It was my first concert. Mike and the rest of the fans in the crowd were going wild, their screams nearly blowing the roof off the place. Her gaze swept across the roaring crowd, and for a split second, our eyes met before she looked away. The music was great that night, but I didn't hear a single word, because in that moment, everything went silent except for the pounding of my own heart. After the show, a mob of fans rushed backstage to get her number, and I was right there with them. After 23 years of being single, it was probably the bravest thing I'd ever done. Chloe didn't turn anyone down. Every fan who asked for her number that day got it, including me. A year later, all the other guys who'd been chasing her had given up, but I was still there. I don't know if it was out of pity, or because she was touched by my persistence, or something else, but Chloe finally accepted me. I became her boyfriend, and that's how it's been. But I knew that in all our years together, Chloe had never truly been in love with me. Or maybe she did like me, but she liked how agreeable I was, how considerate, how I never made a fuss. I caught her cheating multiple times, but as long as she gave me a plausible excuse, I'd always forgive her. She told me many times that I wasn't her type, that she was only with me because I treated her well. She'd even joked that she would dump me the second she found her true love. Our relationship had survived this long solely on the back of my willingness to compromise on everything. You promised me you wouldn't cheat again, I said in a low voice, staring at the shredded designer t-shirt on the floor. A flicker of mockery crossed Chloe's eyes. She had no intention of placating me. You actually believed that was a serious promise? She smirked, leaned in, and blew a cloud of menthol smoke in my face, her expression purely malicious. Can't handle it. If you can't handle it, you can always break up with me. She'd said those exact words to me countless times before, and every time, it ended with me holding her, begging her not to go. Over time, she learned exactly how to control me. She knew that when she said that, I'd fold. I turned my head. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Chloe grabbed my wrist. Her features were sharp, and when her face was blank, she had an intimidating presence. Ethan, don't push it. I shook her hand off and went into the bedroom. A few moments later, the front door slammed shut with a deafening crash. Chloe was gone. She was angry. I knew it. After all, I was always the one placating her, putting her on a pedestal. I'd never given her the cold shoulder like this before. I rolled over and checked my phone. In the family group chat, my mom had sent a message in iMessage, tagging me. I've never pushed you before, honey, but you're 27 now. It's really time to start thinking about marriage. My coworker's daughter is a great girl, and she's very pretty. Why don't you come home for the holidays and meet her? Next, I opened a message from my boss. Ethan, the new branch office is looking for people. Frankly, with your skills, you're wasted as a deputy department head. Are you interested in a manager position at the new branch? It'll be challenging to build it up from the start, but the opportunity is there for you. My mom wanted me to come home for a blind date. The company had just opened a new branch office, right in my hometown of Columbus. The timing, the location, the opportunity, it seemed like I really had no reason to stay in New York anymore. I sighed. The truth was, I really did like Chloe. She was gorgeous, had an amazing body, and we were incredible in bed. Most importantly, she was a player. Being with her was easy because I never had to think about being responsible for her or consider a future together. When I first started my career, I was so stressed out I just wanted to find someone to blow off steam with. The problem was, I'm pretty average looking myself, but I'm incredibly picky about looks. I couldn't find anyone who met my standards until I met Chloe. She spent the best years of her youth with me, relieving so much of my career stress. And even though she was promiscuous, she was careful about it. I'd heard that before we got together, she made all her partners show a clean health screening from within the last 3 days. I was always careful too, so I wasn't worried about catching anything. Finding another woman this perfect for my needs would be tough, but it couldn't be helped. Dating was one thing. Marriage and settling down was something else entirely. I really liked Chloe, but I also knew, with absolute clarity, that she was not wife material. Now, it was time for me to make a choice. Chloe didn't come back that night. She was gone for the next few days. She ignored my texts and calls. Then my messages stopped going through altogether. She'd blocked me. The silent treatment, her specialty. This had happened a few times before. Chloe was a master of the cold shoulder, and I always had to grovel for ages before she'd even look at me again. This time, however, I was busy handing off my work projects and didn't have time to chase her. That evening, as I was booking my flight back to Columbus, my phone suddenly rang. It was one of Chloe's friends. The background was chaotic, a mix of men and women laughing. The music so loud it was jarring even through the phone. Ethan, Chloe's had too much to drink. Can you come get her? Chloe loved clubbing. Her family was wealthy. The band was just a hobby, not a source of income. I once asked her why she didn't join the family business. She'd scoffed, saying her father's kids from other women were already at each other's throats for that money, and she had no interest in fighting over table scraps. Besides, her grandfather's and mother's fortunes were all coming to her. She didn't need the money. She could spend her life doing whatever she wanted. Chloe seemed to have zero career ambition, which was one area where we had nothing in common. Whenever I told her about a big project I landed or a promotion I got, she always seemed completely uninterested. She once sneered that it was pointless to work yourself to death for a monthly salary that wouldn't even cover her bar tab for a single night. I knew we were fundamentally different people. Beyond physical chemistry, we had nothing to talk about. I didn't care about her soul. I just wanted her body. She ignored my inner world, simply accustomed to my agreeableness. It worked out well. That way, when we finally broke up, neither of us would be hurt. I thought about it and agreed. After hanging up, I looked out the window. The city seemed more brilliant at night than in the day, a sprawling tapestry of traffic and lights that completely washed out the stars. I glanced at my flight confirmation, 8 a.m., the day after tomorrow. I sighed. I actually didn't want to break up just yet. Chloe and I were so good together, and with all the stress from the job change, I was kind of hoping for one last round of breakup sex. I pursed my lips, a little disappointed. But since the opportunity presented itself, I had to take it. When I got to the club, Chloe was surrounded by a crowd of young guys. Tall and handsome, cute and boyish, every type was there. The one thing they had in common was that they were all good-looking, their young faces practically glowing with youth. You couldn't blame them for flocking to her. Chloe was rich, generous, and beautiful. On her, even being a player seemed like a charming trait. I touched my own face, remembering something Chloe had said to me once. "You're 27, you should hit the gym. Can't you take care of your body a little?" No wonder she was unimpressed with me. She was surrounded by guys in their early 20s. I didn't say anything, just stood at the edge of the group until my eyes met hers. She looked right through me, her gaze shifting away almost immediately. Leo, his face flushed, was pressed right up against her, his voice syrupy. "Chloe, come on, one more drink." Chloe smiled. Under the club lights, the corners of her eyes tilted up, gorgeous, but utterly cold. "Drinking it like this is boring. Why don't you feed it to me?" "How?" Chloe didn't answer, just lowered her gaze to his lips. Half a second later, understanding dawned on Leo's face, a flash of thrilled surprise in his eyes. He tilted his head back and downed the caramel-colored whiskey in one go. Then Chloe grabbed his chin and crushed her mouth to his. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was pure, raw emotion being vented. Leo took it, his head tilted back, his eyes starting to water from lack of air. Whiskey dribbled from the corners of their mouths, catching the light as they kissed, until they finally pulled apart, a thin, silvery thread of saliva connecting them. The crowd around them exploded, everyone screaming and catcalling. I knew she was doing it on purpose. She was punishing me for giving her the cold shoulder the other day and for not immediately coming back to grovel. The noise only died down when I walked right up to Chloe, and everyone finally noticed me. Chloe looked up, her expression indifferent. "What are you doing here?" I looked at her face, and for a moment, I was lost in memories of our intimate past. In the heat of the moment, we'd even said we loved each other. Did it hurt? A little, I guess, but I couldn't say I was devastated. After all, I always knew who Chloe was. A player, always chasing the next thrill, incapable of saying no. Selfish, probably from a lifetime of being spoiled, always putting herself first without a thought for anyone else. My voice trembled as I said, "Chloe, you've gone too far." Chloe looked up at me. She was sitting and I was standing, but somehow, I felt like she was the one looking down on me. She still wore that same indifferent expression, a contemptuous smirk on her lips. "Too far? You can always break up with me. No one's stopping you." I didn't say a word, just stared at her. I've lost count of how many times she's used breaking up as a threat. 50 times? 100? One of her friends nearby thought she'd gone too far, whispering to her, since everyone had seen how I treated her over the years. "Chloe, stop being mad at him. Look, you're making his eyes red." And in fact, my eyes were red. If you're going to put on a show, you have to commit. The moment a single tear fell, I saw Chloe's expression shift. The fingers holding her cigarette twitched, but she said nothing, just watched me with a cold stare. The next second, I said softly, "Fine, Chloe, let's break up." The color drained from Chloe's face. For a second, I thought she was going to fly into a rage. But instead of anger, she laughed, a laugh that looked like it was forced through gritted teeth. "Wow, Ethan, fine. But just so you know, I never go back for seconds. Just don't come crawling back to me like a pathetic dog." "Okay," I nodded, wiping the tear from my eye. Then I turned and walked away without a single glance back. Chloe didn't come home that night. I stayed up deleting her number and every trace of her from my life, then packed my bags. The next morning, I was on the first flight back to Columbus. As the plane broke through the clouds, I pulled out my SIM card and dropped it into the trash bag. I didn't contact Chloe again. I posted a few vague, sad updates on my Facebook to establish the heartbroken victim narrative, and then I promptly put her out of my mind. Life back in Columbus fell into a routine. I quickly got the hang of my new job and met the woman my parents had set me up with. The slightly overweight office worker across the table was still rambling on. "I believe a man's focus after marriage should be his career. You won't have to worry about the house, but you must support my career." Behind every successful woman, there should be a supportive man. She droned on and on. I just smiled at my coffee cup, trying my hardest not to dump it over her head. When she finally paused for breath, she looked at me expectantly. Did you get all that? Do you have anything to add? I kept my smile plastered on. Nope, that covers it. But Wendy, I don't think we're a good match. I think it's best we don't see each other again. I turned and left as she started muttering about how men over 30 with no car and no house are worthless and have no right to be picky. In the weeks I'd been back, my mom had set me up with quite a few women, and some of them were perfectly fine, objectively speaking. But once you've had the best, it's hard to settle for the rest. After someone like Chloe, I just couldn't bring myself to be interested in these perfectly average women. This feeling lingered until one morning at a company meeting. Everyone was there early, sitting silently around the conference table. The atmosphere was tense. I leaned over to the VP next to me and whispered, "What's going on? Is the company in trouble?" The VP whispered back, "The chairman's daughter just flew in. The rumor is she's using our branch as a training ground before she takes over the entire Covington group. This is Grace Covington. I heard she's a Harvard grad, did a few years at Goldman Sachs, then started her own investment firm and made a fortune practically overnight. The only reason she's back is because the chairman has been pressuring her for years. She's the real deal, a total shark. Be careful what you say around her." A few moments later, a young woman in a black power suit walked in, a black wool coat draped over her shoulders. An assistant respectfully took her coat as she entered, and the clicking of her heels stopped. I looked up, and in that instant, not just me, but every single person in the room had their attention completely captured by her. The first thing that hit you was her presence. It was the aura of someone who was used to being in charge, used to being in control. She wasn't overtly arrogant, but everyone in the room, myself included, felt an instinctive urge to look down, to avoid her direct gaze. On the second look, you noticed her incredibly sharp eyes. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek, efficient bun, revealing a high, clear forehead. I'd heard the chairman was French, and you could see it in her. She had the perfect blend of her father's sharp, European bone structure and her mother's delicate Asian features. The woman was stunning, easily on par with Chloe, but her presence was so powerful that you almost didn't notice her beauty at first. "Apologies, my flight was delayed. I'm late." She acknowledged her tardiness first, then took her seat at the head of the table and got straight to the point. "My name is Grace Covington. I'll be the new general manager. I've already reviewed the company's foundational documents and financial reports. Now, starting with the VP, I want each of you to give me a brief on your performance over the last year and your current projects." One by one, the department heads gave their reports, all of them on edge. Miss Covington was exactly as advertised, a true professional, immediately calling out anyone who tried to gloss over the details. "I don't like vague language, and I don't like being misled. I hope we can all communicate effectively. But if my attempts at communication fail, I am prepared to consider other methods." She hadn't raised her voice or insulted anyone, but a cold sweat broke out on everyone's back. Even my palms were damp when it was my turn to stand. Luckily, I was well prepared. My performance over the past year had been strong, and as I spoke, my confidence grew. My education and my career are my points of pride, the most important things in my life. I never cut corners with them. Miss Covington didn't interrupt. I could see a flicker of appreciation in her eyes. After a moment, I paused, indicating I was done. She nodded. "Ethan Miller, correct? Good work. From now on, all reports will be held to this standard." After Ms. Covington's arrival, everyone's workload intensified. She cut a lot of red tape and divested underperforming assets, while also bringing in several high-quality new projects. The overtime hours piled up, but so did the paychecks. My colleagues, especially the younger guys, were all fascinated by Ms. Covington. A couple of new hires, clearly out of their minds, decided to try out the whole powerful female CEO falls for the lowly office worker fantasy. One of them publicly challenged her in a meeting, and the other accidentally spilled coffee on her $3,000 suit and then tried to help by dabbing at it with his hands. The first guy was fired the next day. The second one was fired on the spot. All the guys learned their lesson after that. But during breaks, the break room was still buzzing with gossip about her. "I heard she's never had a boyfriend. You think she's still a virgin? No way. You've been watching too many movies. A woman like that, men are lining up. There's no way. I'd give my entire year's bonus just for one date with her. She's the total package. Did you see her in that pencil skirt the other day? Those legs, that waist, my God, her body is unreal." Listening to them, an idea began to form in my mind. Without Chloe, this Grace Covington seemed like a much better option. This woman, I decided, was worth a shot. I began to strategically place myself in Grace's path. She got to work half an hour early every day, so 3 days a week, I made sure to catch the same elevator, usually when it was just the two of us. I wouldn't say much, just a simple good morning, before pressing her floor button and standing quietly. Then, like clockwork, I'd head to the break room for coffee at noon. She usually got her coffee around the same time. I made sure we never actually crossed paths in the break room itself, always leaving just before she arrived, but making sure she saw me on my way out. Occasionally, I'd work late, so she would pass my desk on her way out. The goal was maximum visibility with minimum interaction. Finally, after she'd seen me working late for the 17th time, she paused and walked over to my desk. "I've noticed you working late a lot recently. Are you running into any issues?" I looked up, feigning surprise, then hesitated for a moment before handing her the file I was working on. "I just took on a new project, but I'm having trouble assessing the risk on some of this company's assets, so I'm putting in some extra research." Grace casually sat down at the empty desk next to mine. "Let me see." She wore a subtle, woody perfume that mingled with my own light citrus cologne, creating a pleasant, almost intoxicating scent. "I think this project is viable. If you look at their 23 financial statements, their position is quite solid, and besides," she spoke with confident expertise. I listened intently, nodding and interjecting with highly specific, technical questions, making sure to look enlightened after each of her answers. "I see now. Thank you, Miss Covington. I hadn't considered it from that angle at all. You have strong technical skills, you just need a bit more experience. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Go home and get some rest," she said, with a rare hint of a joke in her voice. "I don't want people thinking I'm some kind of slave driver." I nodded, packed up my things, and we walked downstairs together. As we stepped outside, a gust of wind blew rain into my face. I hesitated, taking a step back under the awning. Grace was about to leave, but she noticed I hadn't moved and turned back. "What's wrong?" I waved her on. "It's nothing, Miss Covington. You go ahead. Just remembered something I need to take care of." She didn't press, just nodded and walked away. 5 minutes later, her car pulled out of the underground garage. I was still standing by the entrance. Grace rolled down her window. "You didn't drive today?" I answered sheepishly, "No. It's hard to get a ride in the rain." "It's fine, Miss Covington. I'm sure one will show up soon," she said. "Get in. I'll give you a ride." I talked a lot with Grace on the drive. She seemed surprised to discover how much we had in common. Even my supposed favorite niche film, The Holy Mountain, turned out to be her favorite as well. Grace's initial reserved demeanor slowly gave way to a more talkative one. By the time we reached my street, she was so engaged in conversation that she drove right past my building. I pursed my lips, about to point it out, but she had already realized. "Sorry, I wasn't watching the navigation." When the car stopped, I thanked her again for the ride home. Grace just nodded. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something, but then she seemed to think better of it. "Is something wrong, Miss Covington?" I asked, looking at her. "What cologne are you wearing? It's nice." The moment the words left her mouth, she seemed to regret them. Saying anything else would only make it more awkward, so she just looked down, silent. I hid a smile. "It's Passage d'Offer by Lardizan." "Well, Miss Covington, I'll see you tomorrow." I stood behind my curtains and watched her drive away, then picked up a notebook from my desk. I hadn't driven to work in weeks, all for the chance of a moment like this. Thankfully, the weather forecast was accurate today, and the rain came right on schedule. I opened the notebook. It was filled with notes on Grace's preferences. There was very little public information on her, but I'd managed to dig up an old social media account from her college days. I had meticulously documented every detail, which is how I learned about her supposed favorite things. I had only watched The Holy Mountain the night before. It couldn't be helped. For an average guy like me to land a woman like her, I had to put in the extra effort. I smirked, and had just sat down on my bed to relax when my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but the voice on the other end was familiar. It was Chloe, her tone cool and detached. "You left a lot of your stuff here. Come get it, or I'm throwing it all out." I had left some things behind, but it was just junk I didn't want to bother packing. I figured she would have just thrown it all out, so I was surprised she even bothered to call. "Just toss it. I don't want any of it," I said, my tone dismissive as I flipped through my notebook on Grace. Chloe was clearly not happy with that answer. After a long pause, she hung up. She was always like that, moody and unpredictable, always needing to be coddled. But I wasn't obligated to do that anymore. I blocked the number and forgot about it. I'd already made my move with Grace yesterday. I couldn't use the same approach today. I actually left work on time for once and went to a bar with Mike to grab a few drinks. After a few rounds, we were both feeling it. Mike squinted at me. "You were so into Chloe. Now that you've suddenly broken up, are you really over her?" When I was with Chloe, my friends were always giving me a hard time, saying I was a total simp with no self-respect. But I never saw it that way. If I wanted to be with someone like Chloe for her body, I had to pay the price. Besides, it was my choice to act that way. How is that a lack of self-respect? I put down my glass. She's the kind of girl you date for fun. I'm not an idiot. It's fine to mess around when you're young. But if I actually married her, my life would be a living hell. Mike gave me a thumbs up. Damn, man, you're on another level. You've got a point. You got to enjoy a woman like Chloe in her prime. Turns out you were the one playing the long game all along. He suddenly trailed off, his eyes wide with terror as he stared at something behind me. Am I so drunk I'm hallucinating right now? A soft, cold laugh came from behind me, and in an instant, all the alcohol in my system seemed to vanish. Oh, so that's the reason you dumped me, is it? I turned around stiffly. Chloe was leaning against a pillar, dressed in a white silk blouse, watching me with a cold expression. Mike, being the loyal friend he was, immediately made himself scarce. Chloe grabbed me and pulled me into an empty hallway. She stood over me, and for a second, I seriously thought she was going to rip my head off. What are you doing here? I asked, trying to get the upper hand. You didn't come all the way to Columbus just for me, did you? Chloe gave a lazy smirk. Ethan, don't flatter yourself. The band has a gig here. But if I hadn't happened to run into you, I never would have known I was just your plaything for the last 3 years. I was just joking with my friend. You know how it is. You hurt me, and I have my pride. I turned my head away, but she grabbed my chin and forced me to look at her. She gritted her teeth. Ethan, do you really think I'm that stupid? Yes, I thought to myself. I pulled my chin, which was starting to ache, from her grip and said calmly, Chloe, whatever you think, I gave you my all for the past 3 years. You can't honestly say I didn't treat you well. I have nothing to feel guilty about. You're the one who kept wronging me. So even if I was just playing with you, it's not like you got nothing out of it. What about my time? Don't my years count? Since it's come to this, let's just part amicably. We did, after all. I paused, unable to bring myself to say the word love. At least we had something. Chloe stared at me for a long time. Just when I thought she was about to explode, she laughed. Under the dim light, she was as beautiful as ever, but I no longer felt that spark. You can get tired of even the most beautiful face after seeing it for over 1,000 days and nights. Ethan, you really think you're all that? Chloe smirked. Of course we'll part amicably. Did you really think I'd chase after you? But just remember this, you didn't dump me. I, Chloe Vance, dumped you. With that, she turned and walked away, as if she were leaving something disgusting behind. I watched her go and let out a silent sigh. Chloe had probably never been dumped in her life. Getting dumped by me must have really bruised her ego. But if that's what she needed to tell herself to feel better, it was fine by me. I kept up my routine of working late, and I noticed Grace was staying later and later too. Occasionally, she'd give me a ride home. It was that crisp, cold weather of late fall, where you could see your breath and the city lights seemed sharper. The chill in the air made you want to huddle closer to someone for warmth. We'd talk about work projects, about our weeks. I'd complain about a difficult client, and sometimes she'd even agree with me. Yes, that guy is a complete moron. And we'd both laugh. Over time, I could feel her warming up to me. So, on the day of the first snowfall, I decided it was time to make a bigger move. I asked her for some time off. When she asked why, I hesitated before answering. It's a family thing. Normally, that would be the end of the conversation, but Grace frowned. Is someone in your family okay? Is there anything I can do to help? I gave an awkward laugh. No, my mom is forcing me to go on a blind date. Grace froze. I'd never seen that expression on her face before. I added, I'm 27, and my family is really putting the pressure on. I've managed to avoid it until now, but this time I don't have a choice. After a long pause, Grace looked down at her watch. Fine, but you know how busy we are. I can only approve. She made a show of checking her watch. 2 hours. I think that should be sufficient for a blind date. All right, you now have 1 hour and 59 minutes. I wasn't lying to Grace. I really was going on a blind date. My recent dates had been duds, and my mom was starting to panic. This time, the candidate was actually promising. Educated abroad, worked at a major tech company, 5'6", with a sweet, gentle demeanor. She was respectful and didn't talk down to me. I was actually interested, so we ended up talking for a while. Halfway through our coffee, my date went to the restroom. I was scrolling through my phone when I sensed someone sit down across from me. I looked up to speak and froze. Sitting across from me wasn't my date, but Chloe. She was nearly 5'9", and the booth that was perfectly sized for my date was cramped for her. Her long legs were folded awkwardly, and she had to lean all the way back. Chloe picked up the VW keys my date had left on the table and sneered. So you broke up with me to come back here and date this? The smile faded from my face. I thought you were just here for a gig with the band. Why are you still in town? The tour's schedule changed. You think I want to be in this armpit of a town? I said sternly. I need you to respect my date. She's a nice person. Please leave now and don't interrupt us. Chloe's expression instantly soured, the smirk vanishing. When my date returned, she looked completely bewildered by the scene. Excuse me, who are you? Chloe didn't even glance at her. The tension was thick. I'm his girlfriend. So if you know what's good for you, you'll leave. I quickly tried to explain. No, she's not. But Chloe stood up and grabbed my wrist. What? Do you need to see us make out to believe me? By the time I managed to pull my wrist free, my date was already storming out, furious. I exploded. Chloe, what the hell is wrong with you? We broke up. Chloe leaned back against the booth, a smug, punchable smile on her face. That was a unilateral decision. I never agreed to it. It's a breakup, not a divorce. I don't need to agree to it. Besides, you're the one who said you never go back for seconds. I changed my mind, Chloe said, as casually as if she were deciding what to have for lunch. You're good at taking care of me. It's comfortable. I've decided I don't want to break up anymore. I was so speechless I almost laughed. I forced a tight smile. Well, I'm not comfortable. I gave you the best years of my life. What do you have to be uncomfortable about? She raised her voice, drawing the attention of everyone in the cafe. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. I leaned forward to cover her mouth. Be quiet. Chloe grabbed my hand, and I watched as a wicked grin spread across her face. You haven't met anyone better since we broke up, have you, Ethan? You know it yourself. I'm the best you'll ever get, and we're amazing in bed. Instead of settling for these nobodies, why don't we just? Her words were cut short as a hand grabbed my arm and pulled me away. I looked up. It was Grace, still in her black power suit from the office, her brow deeply furrowed. I thought you were on a date. What's going on? Is she harassing you? I was completely stunned. My plan was to make Grace jealous, but instead of Grace showing up, Chloe had crashed the party. And now, in the middle of Chloe's meltdown, Grace was here. I'm his girlfriend. Who are you to be sticking your nose in our business? Chloe stood up, annoyed. The two tall, imposing women faced off, eye to eye. I'm Ethan's boss, Grace said calmly. And as far as I know, Ethan is single. Does he need to report his relationship status to you? Chloe shot a look back at me, a smirk playing on her lips. Oh, so that's why you dumped me so easily. This is your new target, isn't she? Ethan, does she have any idea what a manipulative person you are? Are you planning on pulling the same routine on her that you pulled on me? Even my usually steady composure was cracking. I was about to fire back at her, but Grace spoke first. So you're the ex he dumped. If Ethan broke up with you, it means he's not interested. Pestering him won't change that. Chloe's face fell. She looked at me. Your 2 hours are up. We have a meeting to get to. Let's go. I didn't have time to argue. I just frowned at Chloe. I don't know what your problem is, Chloe, but I don't owe you anything. We were together because we both wanted to be. I never forced you into anything. I'll say it again. Let's just part amicably. Please, don't bother me anymore. Chloe looked like she wanted to say something else, but after hearing me, her expression went dark, and she remained silent. Grace grabbed my wrist and led me out of the cafe. Was that really your ex-girlfriend? Grace asked once we were in the car, her arms resting on the steering wheel, her voice low. Didn't you say we had a meeting? Was that your ex-girlfriend? She repeated. Yes, I said, rubbing my face with a bitter laugh. We were together for 3 years. I really cared about her, but she cheated on me, over and over. I just couldn't take it anymore. That's why I moved back to Columbus, to get away from it all. I was really hurt. And these past few days with you. I glanced at her expression, letting my voice drop. I was starting to feel better. I was finally starting to move on. And then she shows up again to harass me. Grace glanced at me. She doesn't deserve you. Don't go soft on her. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Her infidelity proves she can't control her baser instincts. She's a person with zero self-control, and she clearly doesn't love you. You deserve to be with someone who is responsible. I had to fight to keep a smile from my face, forcing a sad expression instead. But good women like you are so rare. Where am I supposed to find someone like that? The tips of Grace's ears turned a faint pink. She cleared her throat. Well, I suppose I'm the only one who's good enough for you. 3 days later, I was at a bar having a drink when I got a text from Grace. She was asking when I was coming back to work. I had been a little stunned by her almost confession the other day. I hadn't expected her to be so direct, but I hadn't responded. I was serious about Grace. From what I'd learned about her, she exceeded my standards for a partner in every conceivable way. That's why we couldn't just fall into a relationship haphazardly. Not like it was with Chloe. A messy beginning always leads to a messy end. So, using the heartbreak as an excuse, I took my annual leave to clear my head and hang out with some friends. This bar was one of the classier spots in town, not too rowdy, and the house band was actually really good. I was watching the beautiful people on the dance floor and having a drink with my friend when the music suddenly stopped. A moment later, a single acoustic guitar began to play. I found a love for me. Darling, just dive right in and follow my lead. Well, I found a girl, beautiful and sweet. Oh, I never knew you were the someone waiting for me. 'Cause we were just kids when we fell in love, not knowing what it was. I will not give you up this time. A magnetic, slightly husky voice filled the room. I froze, my drink halfway to my lips, and stared at the stage. Chloe was sitting on a high stool, wearing a black button-down shirt, strumming her guitar. A silver chain glinted at her throat. In that instant, the noisy crowd, the dim lights, everything faded away. All I could see was the glimmer in her eyes as they met mine. The guys in the audience were going wild, all of them talking about how they were going to get her number after the set. It was just like the first time I ever saw her. Except this time, I wasn't the one walking towards her. Holding her guitar in one hand, Chloe slowly walked off the stage, right towards me, and smiled. "Can I get your number?" The whole bar erupted, and I, who thought my heart was completely immune to her, felt an undeniable flicker of something. I looked at Chloe, my expression complicated. "Why are you doing this?" It's not that I have low self-esteem. I could tell Chloe genuinely liked me. But how much of that was about me, and how much was about the fact that I took care of her every need and was sensible enough to never cause a scene when she cheated? I suspected that all of this was because, in her mind, I had always been the submissive one. She had all the power in our relationship, and now she, the queen, had been dumped by her loyal subject, and her ego just couldn't handle it. The crowd slowly dispersed. Chloe waved to the band on stage, and the music started up again. She slid into the booth next to me, leaned back, and sighed. "What you said the other day, I went home and thought about it. You were right. You never did anything wrong in our relationship. You gave me so much, and I was the one who kept hurting you. I understand why you left." Her expression was stiff, as if she were forcing out words she didn't want to say, the apology clumsy and unpracticed. "So, if I promise to change, if I promise to be good to you and not mess around with other guys, will you?" She seemed to remember her vow never to go back for seconds. Her face flushed, and she seemed to brace herself. "Will you take me back?" "I'm sorry. It was all my fault." I stared at Chloe in shock, as if she'd been replaced by an alien. The Chloe who always looked down her nose at me was actually apologizing, actively asking me to take her back. Whose idea was this? I asked, knowing this wasn't her style. Someone must have put her up to this. Chloe pursed her lips. "My friends. After we broke up, they all told me I'd gone too far, that if I wanted to win you back, I had to swallow my pride." She looked like she'd reached her limit for humility. "So, will you take me back or not? I'm a million times better than those women you're meeting. After me, how can you even look at them? And that boss of yours, she's obviously some boring workaholic who'll only ever talk business with you. We've had 3 years to get used to each other. We're the perfect match." I changed the subject. "How did you get the bar owner to let you do all this?" Chloe smirked. "I bought the bar. I'm the owner now. Do you like it? It's yours if you want it." "No, thanks." I finished the last of my drink, grabbed my coat, and stood up. I appreciate the gesture. The song was great, but getting back together is not an option. The air grew still. Chloe's lips tightened into a thin line as she stared at me, her face unreadable. Why? Chloe had these beautiful, expressive eyes that were always sparkling, even when she was upset. I'd rarely seen them look so cold and flat. "Because," I smiled, "I never go back for seconds." To escape Chloe's continued harassment, I volunteered for a week-long business trip out of state. The deal was mostly finalized. That night, at a celebratory dinner, a female executive from the client's company kept giving me looks that made my skin crawl. "So, Ethan, how old are you?" The impeccably dressed middle-aged woman kept asking me personal questions. I suppressed my irritation. 27. Still single? Too focused on your career, I bet. She chuckled, leaning closer, and even tried to read my palm, an advance I politely deflected. I'd run into her type before, people who assume a young guy will put up with anything to close a deal and use it as an excuse to get handsy. I was annoyed, but it was a big project, so I just had to tolerate it. My phone rang. It was Grace. "Are you at dinner?" she asked, hearing the loud woman in the background. "It sounds chaotic. I just texted your VP. If you're done eating, feel free to leave." I was more than ready to leave, but I hadn't counted on her being such a sloppy drunk. After a few more drinks, she started getting belligerent, grabbing my arm and refusing to let me go. "It's good to be ambitious, young man, but sometimes hard work isn't enough. There are shortcuts in this world, you know. I have a few other projects we could discuss. Why don't we talk about them in my room later? She tried to hand me her room key. I held my breath against the reek of alcohol on her breath and pushed it back. Ms. Davis, I'm just part of the project team. You should really discuss this with my superiors. To my surprise, she flew into a rage, yanking me to my feet. You're just a department manager. Who the hell do you think you are? A guy like you in a manager position? You probably slept your way to the top. Don't act so high and mighty. What? Am I not important enough for you? You arrogant little prick. How dare you look down on me? She was surprisingly strong for a drunk person. It took several of my male colleagues to pull her off me. My heart was hammering in my chest. My wrist throbbed where she'd grabbed it, and I stood there, leaning against the wall, completely stunned. It was only when my VP gave me a signal that I snapped out of it and bolted from the room. I looked down at my phone. The call with Grace was still active. When I put the phone back to my ear, Grace didn't offer any words of comfort. She said only to wait for me. The client's office wasn't that far, but it was still over a 3-hour drive. Grace was always incredibly busy. The new branch was just getting on its feet and needed her there. I thought she might video call me, or maybe send someone else from the office to take over. I went back to my hotel room, but I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. It wasn't a big deal, really. I was used to this kind of thing. My family couldn't help me financially. I paid for college with student loans and worked odd jobs from morning to night just to get by. Back then, when a female boss made unwanted advances, I just had to put up with it. Things were much better now. At least now, I could say no. The hours ticked by, and I heard nothing more from Grace. I rolled over with a bitter smile. It was foolish to still be expecting something. Maybe I was more like my mother than I wanted to admit, inheriting the weakness I always despised in her. I rarely saw my father growing up. He was a collection of human vices, a gambling addict, never home, always with another woman. The only times he showed up were when he needed money. If my mom refused, he would beat her and me. From the moment I was old enough to understand, I begged my mom to divorce him. Everyone we knew told her the same thing. But every time, she would just cry and say she had to stay for my sake, to give me a complete family. At first, I couldn't understand how she could think that a complete family with a man like that was better for me. Later, I realized she was just using me as an excuse. The truth was, she was the one who couldn't leave. Every time she caught him cheating, she would have a massive breakdown, threatening to kill herself and him. But the moment he actually tried to leave, she would fall apart, kneeling and crying, begging him to stay. In that endless cycle of abuse, she had developed a kind of Stockholm syndrome. She hated him, but she couldn't live without him. I grew up in the middle of that endless, toxic push and pull. I learned from a young age that you couldn't rely on anyone else, especially not on love. If you wanted something, you had to get it yourself. I would never get back together with Chloe because I knew she would never change. No matter what she promised, she would never be faithful. And I refused to repeat my mother's tragedy. As for Grace, did I really like her? I wasn't even sure myself. Maybe I just liked that she was successful, that she seemed stable, that she was, in every way, the opposite of Chloe. I had created a persona to get close to her, to make her like me. I knew the foundation of our connection was a lie. For the first time in a long time, I felt lost. Was this really what I wanted? Just then, my hotel room doorbell rang. I wrapped the comforter around myself and went to the door. It was Grace, dressed in another impeccable suit, looking as if she hadn't just driven for hours through the night. I've already informed the client that we are terminating the partnership. The woman who harassed you has been fired. I will personally ensure she never works in this industry again. You will never have to see her again. Her expression was calm and professional. She didn't hug me or offer empty platitudes, but just having her stand there, solid and capable, was all the reassurance I needed. Grace checked her watch. It's still 3 hours until dawn. I've canceled your meetings for tomorrow. You can sleep in. She paused, then added, I'm in the room next door. If you need anything, just knock. And with that, she turned to leave, as if she had driven all this way in the middle of the night just to deliver that message. And yet, my heart, which had been racing, suddenly felt calm. The moment she turned, I grabbed the lapels of her jacket, pulled her towards me, and stood on my toes. I kissed her, a cool press of lips against hers. I pulled back and smiled at her stunned expression. Grace, be with me. Being with Grace was completely different from being with Chloe. She wasn't the type for romantic sweet talk, but she showed she cared in everything she did. When I had a problem at work, her first instinct wasn't to comfort me, but to find a solution. Any problem I mentioned to her would usually be gone by the next day. She didn't say, I miss you often, but if I was flying in on a red eye, she'd be there at the airport waiting for me. I felt a sense of steady, grounded happiness that was completely new to me. But the happier I became, the more I felt a sense of dread. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. The ground beneath my feet felt solid, but I was terrified that if I looked down, I'd see nothing but an abyss. I started to live in fear that Grace would discover the truth, that the person she knew was a carefully constructed facade. I was afraid she wouldn't like the real me. After a few heavy snows, the temperature plummeted. Between the stress and the long hours at work, I finally got sick. I called in sick and spent the day holed up in my apartment. Grace and I weren't living together. I was afraid that if we got too close, she'd see the parts of me I kept hidden. In a feverish haze, I thought I heard my doorbell ring. I thought I was dreaming until it rang again, several times, and I managed to pry my eyes open. I stumbled to the door and opened it to find Grace standing there. She was holding a thermos in one hand and a bag of medicine in the other. It must have been snowing outside. There were snowflakes melting on her black wool coat, and her long eyelashes were damp. "I heard you were sick," she said, walking over to my kitchen table and setting down the thermos. "You can't take this on an empty stomach. You need to eat some soup first. I wasn't sure what you'd like, so I got a few different kinds." Before I could even process what was happening, she reached out and felt my forehead, then pressed her own against it, frowning. She sat me down on the couch and started laying out the different medicines. "What are your symptoms? Is it a head cold or the flu?" "I think I just got a chill. Probably a cold." Grace picked up one of the boxes and began carefully reading the instructions. I just stared at her, dazed. I remembered the first time I saw her, frowning at a financial report in that meeting room. I had been sitting at the far end of the table, with a dozen people between us. She had seemed so powerful, so untouchable, so cold. But now, this woman who dealt with 8-figure deals was frowning over the dosage instructions on a box of cold medicine. Right here, in front of me, the warm, orange light of my living room softened her features. Her coat was draped over the back of the couch, her sleeves rolled up to her elbows. She looked almost gentle. Suddenly, my heart gave a hard thump that seemed to echo in my head. I thought to myself, I'm done for. I walked over and leaned against her. She put an arm around me, pulling a throw blanket over my shoulders. "What's wrong? Are you feeling worse?" I buried my face in her shoulder, my voice muffled. "What am I going to do, Grace? I think I'm falling for you." She raised an eyebrow. "You mean you didn't before?" "No, it's just..." I couldn't explain it. I've always been terrified of relationships, of that feeling of losing control. I was afraid of ending up like my mother. But right now, it didn't feel so bad. After taking the medicine, I fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. When I woke up, I had broken my fever, and the fog in my head had finally cleared. I got out of bed, feeling much better, and went to find Grace to tell her the good news. Grace. The next second, I was standing in the doorway of my home office, staring at Grace, whose face was completely devoid of expression. In her hands was my notebook, the one with all my research on her. She was already halfway through it. Grace left. She didn't yell. She didn't argue. She didn't say a word, and she didn't look at me again. I stood frozen in the hallway, wanting to call out to her, but I couldn't make a sound. My cold still felt bad, but I could barely feel it. All I could feel was a hollow, freezing emptiness in my chest, as if all the winter wind had been funneled directly into my heart. 2 days later, my sickness had passed, and I went back to work. I went back to my routine, working late, getting coffee at noon, but I never crossed paths with her. It was clear she was actively avoiding me. My iMessage, which used to be constantly buzzing with her texts, was silent. It was as if she had completely forgotten I existed. Sometimes, I try to find a sliver of humor in the situation, thinking, at least she didn't fire me. The woman was nothing if not professional. Other times, I'd grit my teeth, wishing she would just get angry and retaliate. Anything would be better than this cold indifference. I didn't try to seek her out. I'd been caught red-handed. What was there to say? Any explanation would sound like a pathetic excuse. For a woman like Grace, there was probably a long line of men trying to get her attention. I just got lucky with the timing and opportunity. I was no different from any of them. I went back to my old routine, working alone, going home alone. It had never bothered me before, but after getting used to having someone, being alone again felt profoundly lonely. Meanwhile, Chloe had somehow heard that I was single again and started relentlessly pursuing me. After she cornered me at my apartment door yet again, I sighed in exasperation. "What do you want, Chloe? I've already told you. We are not getting back together." Chloe leaned against my doorframe, a silver cuff on her ear glinting in the hallway light. She raised an eyebrow. "You're single now anyway, so why not give us another shot? What does that Covington woman have that I don't? Look at me. Money? I've got plenty of that. Whatever she can give you, I can give you more. Why are you so obsessed with her?" I was tired of arguing. I just like her, okay? It's none of your business. Chloe laughed. It was the kind of infuriatingly beautiful smile that only gorgeous people can pull off when they're being awful. You like her, she said, her voice dripping with cold sarcasm. But does she like you? She leaned in closer, her eyes dark and intense. She only likes the person you pretended to be. I, on the other hand, like the real you. You and her, you're from different worlds. Is a relationship built on lies really what you want? That last question hit a nerve. She was right. My relationship with Grace was built on a lie. But my feelings for her weren't fake. I had genuinely fallen for her. But as Chloe said, what good did that do now? Grace would never want me again. For a woman like her, being played by someone like me was probably a humiliating black mark on her record. Ethan, we're the ones who are meant to be. Chloe's voice was seductive, like a siren's song, meant to lure her prey into the depths. I opened my mouth to respond, but at that exact moment, my phone buzzed. I looked down. It was a text. From Grace. Are you free? I can pick you up in a little while. We should talk. No, I said, looking up at Chloe. What? She blinked, confused. I said, I don't want to get back together with you. I repeated, looking her straight in the eye, enunciating every word. I don't love you. I was done settling. When I saw Grace a few days later, she looked the same as always. No signs of heartbreak, no visible anger at being deceived. The waiter took her dark, gray coat. She sat across from me in a black turtleneck, her eyes downcast, her fingers interlaced on the table. I didn't know what to say, so I stayed silent. Finally, Grace broke the silence. Those tactics you used on me, have you used them on anyone else? I had expected her to ask me why I lied to her. I was so surprised by her actual question that I didn't know how to respond at first. No, it was true. Even with Chloe, I'd never gone to such lengths to research her interests. Grace's expression remained neutral, but I saw the tension in her brow ease just a little. I started, wanting to say I didn't mean to deceive her, but the words felt hollow. I lowered my voice. I'm sorry I deceived you. I know you have every right to be angry. If you don't want to see me anymore, I can. I clenched my fists. I can resign. I can resign. Grace held up a hand. That's not why I'm here. I've done a lot of thinking these past few days. The truth is, I really like you. Even after finding out about the deception, I still like you. That was Grace. She wasn't one for emotional displays, but when she spoke about her feelings, she was brutally, refreshingly direct. Her feelings, like her personality, were not something she felt the need to hide. But a relationship built on a facade can't last. What I like about you is your drive. The fact that you never back down from a challenge. I like that you have a clear plan for your life, that you know what you want and you're not easily swayed. I like that version of you, the one who shares my values. Not the version of you who pretends to like the holy mountain, or skiing in Aspen, or drinking expensive wine. I've always believed that for two people to be together, shared values are more important than shared hobbies. We shouldn't just be lovers. We should be partners, friends, allies walking the same path through life, not drifting apart until we're on completely different roads. She looked up, her light amber eyes fixed on me with a serious intensity. I like you very much, Ethan. I hope that, from now on, we can stop pretending. I want to build a real future with you. I was speechless. I wanted to say 1,000 things, but when I opened my mouth, my mind was a complete blank. I had never been chosen so decisively before. My entire life experience had taught me not to have any faith in relationships. So I had learned to use tactics and manipulation to get what I wanted from them. I thought that was just how it worked. The world is full of people who just settle, who just make do. True love was something that only existed in books and movies. It was like a ghost story, something everyone talks about, but no one has actually seen. I thought finding someone compatible enough to settle down with was the best you could hope for. Love wasn't part of the equation. I thought I was fine with that. Until someone saw right through my facade and told me that she liked the person underneath. She said I didn't have to pretend anymore. She said she wanted to be with me. She was nothing like Chloe. To use the same tactics on her that I had used on Chloe was an insult. In that moment, the storm of emotions in my head went completely quiet. I knew 100 things I could say to charm her, to win her over, but all I could do was nod, stunned. Okay, I promise. Grace smiled. She rarely smiled, and when she did, it was like watching ice melt on a frozen lake, revealing the clear water beneath. Then I forgive you. I started to build a real relationship with Grace. No more studying her preferences, but learning to live with our differences. I stopped pretending to like her art house films. Instead, we'd curl up on the couch after dinner and watch the horror movies that I loved. She acted completely unfazed, but later that night, she woke up with a jolt from a nightmare. She just held on to me without saying a word, until just as I was drifting off to sleep, she whispered, "Honey, can we please not watch any more horror movies?" I stopped pretending to be a wine connoisseur and took her to a dive bar for cheap whiskey shots. She couldn't handle her liquor, her face turning bright red as she coughed and sputtered, and I just sat there laughing at her. She got adorably, seriously angry about it. Later, I discovered she'd secretly bought several bottles of whiskey to practice her tolerance at home. Chloe went back to New York. She stopped bothering me. I heard she had suddenly decided to join the family business and was now in a brutal war with her half-siblings for control. In early March, Grace proposed to me. She said she wanted to get married as soon as possible, that she didn't want to wait any longer. Somehow, Chloe heard about the engagement and insisted on meeting up to talk. We met at a pier. Chloe was leaning against the railing in a black hoodie. She handed me a can of beer, then took a swig from her own, her eyes flicking to the 8-carat diamond on my finger, her tone dripping with envy. "How long have you even been together? And you're already engaged?" I smiled, holding my beer. "When it's the right person, you don't need to wait." She scoffed, then fell silent, staring out at the water for a long time before speaking. "So, Ethan, what about me? You just used me, and when you got bored, you threw me away. Now you get your happily ever after. What am I supposed to do? You have guys lining up for you." "What do you mean? What are you supposed to do? You're not worried about finding someone," I said, playfully nudging her. When she didn't smile, I pulled back. "Chloe, you never really loved me. If you did, you wouldn't have cheated on me all the time. You're just not used to being dumped. Your ego can't handle the fact that I was the one who left." Chloe didn't say anything, just drained the rest of her beer. I handed my unopened can back to her. "I hope you find happiness, Chloe. I mean that." Then I turned and walked away. I had walked a good distance when I heard Chloe call my name from behind me, her voice trembling. "But Ethan, I really did love you." I didn't stop walking. I just raised a hand in a final wave without looking back and kept going. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Grace. "I've been practicing. Rematch tonight at the dive bar downstairs." I couldn't help but smile as I texted back, "You're on." Last one standing. In the distance, the sky was vast, and the sun was breaking through the clouds. Spring was finally here.